Seeing the interest my American spin-off video received, I decided to make a kind of follow-up video in which I discuss one potential spin-off that I'm eager to see, one that I believe would be a great hit and a valuable addition to the Squid Game universe. In my opinion, the most compelling spin-off would center around Inho. There's a lot of untapped potential in exploring exactly what led him down the path of becoming the frontman. His story would serve as a direct parallel to Gi-hoon's, and it would be fascinating to see both perspectives. As I've said in my other videos, Inho and Gi-hoon are two sides of the same coin, one representing the darkness of the world, the other the light. We've already seen Gi-hoon's journey, the one symbolizing hope and humanity. But if we also saw Inho's version, the one representing disillusionment and despair, I believe that contrast would deepen our appreciation for Gi-hoon's sacrifice even more. I don't think Inho was evil from the start. I'm not even sure he's evil now. But the games, combined with the trauma of his wife's death, broke something inside him. To cope with that pain, he adopted the belief that some people are beyond saving and deserve elimination. The central theme of this spin-off would be how Inho gradually lost his faith in humanity piece by piece. The story could begin with Inho in his first year as a police officer, a promising young man with a strong sense of justice, committed to changing the world and doing good. But things didn't go as planned. While on duty, Inho began to see the true nature of the world, and his idealism slowly started to erode. The police force he once envisioned turned out to be nothing like the one he actually joined. He soon discovered that the system was broken. It wasn't designed to be fair. It was built to oppress the weak while protecting the rich. He witnessed bribery, abuse of power, domestic violence, and countless other horrors firsthand. These experiences shook his beliefs to the core. Still, he didn't give up. His sense of justice, though diminished, remained strong. He continued trying to make a difference, even though he was the only one in his department who cared to. Everyone else, including the chief, was corrupt. They warned him not to try so hard, that he'd only get hurt, and urged him to fall in line. They would say the system is too big and powerful to fight, they would say, justifying their own actions, but Inho refused to give in. He stayed true to his values, which made some of his colleagues resent him. At home, his younger brother Jun-ho saw him as a role model and tried to follow his example of justice. Jun-ho admired him so much that he joined the police force too. The two brothers shared a close bond, so close that Inho even donated a kidney to save Jun-ho's life. That selfless act cemented Jun-ho's belief in his brother's goodness and moral strength. Then tragedy struck. Inho learned that his wife was seriously ill. After more tests, the shock deepened. They discovered she was also pregnant. They were faced with an impossible choice: terminate the pregnancy so she might survive, or carry it to term and risk losing both lives. Inho chose to end the pregnancy, reasoning that they could try again once she recovered, but his wife refused to consider it. They ultimately decided to keep the baby. Sadly, her condition worsened rapidly. She needed a kidney transplant, and she needed it fast. If only Inho had the money or connections to make it happen. Desperate, he remembered the hints his coworkers had dropped about taking confiscated money from criminals. As a last resort, he took their advice. But because Inho had always held the moral high ground and criticized their corruption, many in the department resented him. When he finally crossed the line, they seized the opportunity to frame him and expose his actions. After an internal investigation, the conclusion was that Inho had accepted the money as a bribe. He was immediately kicked out of the police force, and his wife's condition continued to worsen. Meanwhile, Jun-ho couldn't believe what was happening. His brother, his role model, accused of such a thing? There was no way. He was certain they had framed him out of spite, as punishment for always calling out their corruption. Jun-ho confronted Inho, hoping for a denial, but Inho didn't deny anything. Instead, he confirmed the accusations, telling his brother that they were all true. Jun-ho's world crumbled in that moment. A heated argument broke out, and Inho, emotionally drained and ashamed, decided to leave home. Imagine Inho, once a promising young officer with a strong moral compass, now completely alone. He had been cast out of the force. His wife was dying in the hospital. and he had no way to save her. And now, even his relationship with his brother was shattered. At rock bottom, Inho was approached by a mysterious recruiter and invited to participate in the games. With no options left, he accepted. What he witnessed inside the games made everything he saw during his years on patrol seem tame. People were being killed while playing children's games, and what disturbed him even more was how willingly others accepted it, simply because money was on the line. Every death increased the prize pool, and that was all that seemed to matter. Imagine what this would do to a man like Inho, someone who once devoted his life to protecting others and fighting injustice. Now he was in a place where betrayal was constant, where friendships were shallow and short-lived, and where survival meant sacrificing others. Humanity had left the building, and worst of all, his own humanity began to erode. He became desensitized. Dead bodies no longer shocked him. Violence no longer fazed him. He stopped questioning it. He stopped resisting. He just gave up. Not because he agreed with what was happening, but because he couldn't bear to fight anymore. He couldn't understand how people could be so willing to kill one another, and even worse, how easily they justified it. I believe there was a vote during Inho's time in the games, just like there was in Gi-hoon's season. And like Gi-hoon, Inho pleaded with the others to end it. He had an emotional outburst, calling for compassion, for morality, but greed triumphed over empathy. His words, just like Gi-hoon's later, were ignored in favor of the growing prize fund. That moment broke him. He lashed out, calling the others murderers, screaming at them for what they were becoming. But instead of listening, the other players pushed him away, isolating him, just like his fellow officers had done years before. This would serve as a powerful parallel. The players in the games were no different from the police officers he once worked with. They all put their own self-interest above everything else. Even those who swore to protect the vulnerable ended up exploiting them. The same dynamic repeated in the games, players targeting the weak just to gain an advantage. Subconsciously, Inho internalized this. He began to believe that this selfishness, this cruelty, was the true nature of humanity. Il-nam, watching everything unfold and intrigued by Inho's moral collapse, summoned him. He offered him a golden ticket, the same offer Inho would later extend to Gi-hoon. The difference was, Inho accepted it, and in his mind, he was right to do so. After everything Inho had been through, and after being placed in an environment that mimicked the worst aspects of the real world, he no longer saw the world as something worth saving, only something to survive. The system had betrayed him. The people he once admired abandoned him, and those he tried to protect turned on each other for the promise of money. In the face of all that, his heart didn't turn evil. It simply broke. So when Il-nam offered him a way to finally be in control, to stop being a powerless witness to cruelty and instead become part of the structure that shapes it, Inho took the offer, not out of greed, but out of resignation. After surviving all the horrors of the games, he returned home only to realize he hadn't escaped hell. He had gone deeper into it. His wife had died, along with their unborn child. His last hope, his final moral anchor, was gone, and he wasn't even there in her final moments. He didn't get to hold her hand. He didn't even attend her funeral. And the money he had suffered so much to win? Useless. It had all come too late. This is why I believe it would have been incredibly powerful to explore Inho's perspective in Season 3. It would help us truly understand why he accepted Il-nam's bet and draw a clear comparison between him and Gi-hoon, because in many ways, their stories are painfully similar. Gi-hoon also won the game. He also returned home to nothing. His mother died alone in the dark while he was playing the game, and his daughter moved to another country with his ex-wife and her new husband. Both men emerged from the same nightmare. Both lost everything that mattered. And yet, one chose to embrace the darkness, while the other clung to hope. What made them choose differently? What changed in them? That's the question Season 3 should have tackled head-on, especially during the moment when Inho reveals himself as the frontman. It was the perfect opportunity to contrast their beliefs in a raw and meaningful way. But instead, we're left to assume. Following those tragic events, Junho would eventually reunite with Inho. They'd discuss morality and human values again. Junho still couldn't understand how his brother could make such choices, but this time, Inho wouldn't even bother to explain. After everything he'd seen in the games, and everything he'd lived through in the police, he had lost faith in humanity. Junho had become a reflection of Inho's former self, unblemished, idealistic, still believing in justice and compassion. Their argument would escalate, and once again, we'd see the clash of two opposing philosophies, hope versus disillusionment. In the final part of the story, Inho would be invited to a private conversation with Ilnam, and surprisingly, Ilnam would understand him completely. He'd validate every choice, every belief. Ilnam would deliver a powerful speech about human nature, about how what happens in the games happens every day in the real world. The only difference is that the games are honest about it. He'd say the system is too vast and entrenched to be changed, echoing the same line Inho once heard from his fellow officers. But this time, Inho would finally understand what that phrase truly meant, and slowly, he'd begin to believe it. Ilnam's words would make sense to him, too much sense. And deep down, Inho would come to the chilling conclusion that if the world is ever to be saved, it must first go through a kind of purgatory, one that eliminates the trash corrupting society. His core belief, to make the world a better place, hadn't died. But the method had changed. By the end of the spin-off, we'd witness Inho's complete transformation. He was no longer the idealistic rookie officer who believed in empathy and kindness. He had become the frontman, someone who believed the only cure for this broken world was to kill the sickness at its root. The final scene would show him putting on the mask for the first time. He pauses, then says, "Let the games begin."